Hey everyone, and welcome to our Java tutorial on operators and expressions. So you can see I have Visual Studio Code pulled up here and our Hello World program ready to go. I'm going to delete our one instruction here, and I'm going to start a comment. To begin this tutorial on operators and expressions, I'd just like to start with a couple of definitions. So let's start with the definition for expression. An expression is a series of numbers and or variables that combine in a valid way to produce a single value. So this might be easier if I gave you a quick example. So the example here will be 2 plus 2. 2 plus 2, we're considering here an expression. It's two numbers that combine in a way that produces a single value, right? That single value being 4. So now let's define operators, right? So an operator is are symbols in the language that perform an action or operation. So if we return to our example up here, 2 plus 2, the operator in this example is the plus sign. This is the addition operator, and it's an arithmetic operator. Right, so it's these types of concepts that we're going to be talking about in this tutorial. We're going to be talking about expressions, which are variables that combine in a way that produces a single value, and we're going to be talking about operators. So these symbols that kind of lie at the center of expressions. So let's talk about some different kinds of operators and how they're used. It might make sense to start off with the arithmetic operators because most of them are going to be familiar. So we have the addition operator, and it does exactly what you think it does. It just adds two numbers together. We have the subtraction operator, and again, it just subtracts two numbers from each other. 3 minus 1 is 2, and that type of thing. We have the multiplication operator, and again, that's the same thing. In Java, these all work the same way as they do in the real world or in other parts of math. And then we have the division operator, and that's just a forward slash like that. Cool. Now this next one you might not be familiar with. It's the percentage sign. This is the remainder operator. And so what this one does is if you remember back to your very first classes, maybe learning long division, you would divide two numbers that didn't perfectly go into one another. So for example, 10 divided by 3. So 3 can go into 10 3 times, and there's 1 left over, right? So the remainder operator actually just produces the remainder of your of that equation. So in the case of 10 divided by 3, the remainder operator would produce 1 because it just takes the remainder. It's actually very useful. It's also in other languages called the modulo operator. So those are the arithmetic operators. Now let's move on to the equality and relational operators in Java. And some of these may be familiar to you as well. Okay, so let's begin with this operator. This is the greater than operator. So an example of this would be 5 is greater than 3, and this expression would produce the result of true. So let's do a print line here, and we will do 5 is greater than 3. Sorry, 3. So in this situation, it's going to print out the result of 5 is greater than 3. So if you remember up here, an expression is a number variable that combines in a way that produces a single value, right? And so in this situation, that single value is true. Or if it was switched to be like 8, then it's false. But let's do this. We'll save it and let's run this program. And we see down here, we've printed out true. So now that's because 5 is greater than 3. If we had something else, like 5 is greater than 35, we know that to be false. So when we run the program, we see down here that it now prints out false. Perfect. So let's move on. So that's an example of the greater than operator. Now, let's move on to our less than operator. These may all seem familiar to you. So we can go the other way with this one. So 3 is now less than 5. Right? So in this situation, the last time we printed this out, 5 is greater than 35. That was untrue. Now let's change the operator to be the less than operator. And we can play this. And we can see that now the value that was previously false is now true because we've changed from using the greater than operator to using the less than operator. And this might be familiar to you as well from your early on mathematics classes. I remember when I first learned these, this is like an alligator mouth and the alligator is eating the larger number. That's how I remember it. So let's move on to another one. So then we have the greater than or equal to operator. And so that is something like, 5 is greater than 3, or that's true, or it can do something like 5 is greater than or equal to 5, for example. So both of these will produce a true result. And you might remember these. This might all be a review. There will be a couple that are unique, potentially, if you haven't seen them in the past, but I think a lot of this is review. Then we have the less than or equal to operator. And so this one is, I think that this is all review at this point, but it's the same thing, except it also covers equivalency there. So, 3 is less than 5, that's true. Less than or equal to 5, that's true. Or 3 is less than or equal to 3, that is also true. Cool. Okay, so this is all review. These might also be review to you, but these are more maybe specific to Boolean logic and languages, computer languages, programming languages. This one is the equivalency operator, or the equal to operator. So this one checks to see if a value is equal to another value. So before, when we were saying, is it higher, is it greater, is it less than, is it greater than, or equal to? This one just checks the equal to part of that. So this is true. And then something like, 5 is equal to So this reads as 5 is equal to 5, right? There's the opposite, or the sister version of this is the not equal to operator. And that looks like this. And this reads as 5 is not equal to 6, right? So we can actually copy this line out here, and we can say, 5 is equal to 5. And let's run it. And so we're seeing true and true because we have one line down here that's true, and we have one line up here that's true. Now let's switch this to 5 is not equal to 5. And then we'll even get rid of this line down here. And I'm going to clear the console so it's a little bit more clean. We'll run it, and we see that this is false, right? 5 is not equal to 5 is false because 5 is equal to 5. Awesome. So, I've been using these operators with just integers, but it also works with strings. So we can say something like Pete is equal to Pete. And if we run this, you'll see that it evaluates to true down here. But now if we write in Pete is equal to Peter, let's run it. And we can see that it evaluates now to false because it's not the same thing. If we now try Pete is equal to Pete with a lowercase p, we run this and we see that it's false because Java is case sensitive, right? So you'll need to be aware of that when you're taking in user input. So a lot of times we'll be taking in user input and we want to check to see, did they enter yes or did they enter no? And it's important to what they call, standardize the data, make it standard or standardize the data. So this is the equality and relational operators. A lot of this was probably review, but there might be a couple new ones in there for you. Okay, let's move on to the last set of operators we're going to be talking about. And these might be the most unfamiliar to people. These are going to be conditional operators. Conditional operators look like this. This is the conditional and operator. And this is the conditional or operator. And so these two operators work very similarly, but differently. So I'm going to remove Visual Studio Code really quick. I'm going to pull over an image of an and truth table. So now the and Boolean operator it evaluates two variables or two values. So let's flip back to Visual Studio Code really quick. I want to show you an example. So an example of the and operator is true and false, right? So this is evaluating to see if the and operator evaluates to see if both values are true. So if both values are true, then the and operator produces a true Boolean. Remember, it's an expression. This is an expression in the same way that 2 plus 2 is an expression, right? And in the beginning, we saw 2 plus 2. Now we're just doing a true and false. It's a very similar expression. So the and operator produces a Boolean result. That Boolean result, if you remember from our previous videos, a Boolean can be either true or false. So the and operator produces a Boolean. How it produces that Boolean is it takes what's on the left side, and if that is true, it looks at what is on the right side, and if that is also true, it produces a true result. So if we look at the truth table, we can see that in this truth table, 0 is false and 1 is true. So here we have our 0. So false and false produces false. False and true produces false. True and false produces false. But then true and true produce true. So, like I was saying with the AND Boolean operator, if both values are true, it produces a true. So if A is true and B is true, it's true. If A is true and B is false, it's false. If A is false and B is false, it's false. So that's the AND operator. The OR operator is similar but different. So the OR operator just needs one of the values to be true. So in this situation, this evaluates to true. So if one value is true in an OR, the whole thing is true. And so I will pull over, close this, and I will pull over another OR truth table. And so we can see if A is false and B is false, then the result is false, right? Because for OR, both have to be true, or just one has to be true. If A is false and B is true, the result is true. If A is true and B is false, the result is true. And if both A and B are both true, then the result is true. So that's the OR truth table. And those are both our conditional operators, right? And OR. And I'm going to move this example up to the same line just to keep things a little bit cleaner. I'm going to move this example up to the same line just to keep things cleaner. So in this situation, true and false equals false. True and false equals true. Okay, awesome. So the one last thing that I would like to point out is that the equality in rational operators produces a Boolean result, right? So 5 is greater than 3 produces the result of true. 3 is less than 5 produces true. I mean, all of these produce true, right? So with these equality and relational operators and conditional operators, which also produce Boolean results, you can think of these as Boolean operators because they produce a Boolean result. Whereas our arithmetic operators produce a number, right? They're going to produce an integer, except when, and there's one trick here, we can take our addition operator and we can use it with strings. So if we print out hello, and then we have a space, and then we print out world, this will actually compile because it's combining the two strings together. And so this is kind of a clever usage of the addition operator. And so we print it out here, we see hello world. So this is done through a method called overloading. So I don't want to get too deep into it, but the addition operator can also work on strings as well. Awesome. So these are our three types of operators. Remember, an expression is a combination of numbers and variables that produce a single value. Remember, operators are symbols in a language that perform an action or an operation. So in the example of 2 plus 2, the plus sign is the operator, and it combines the two values on either side of it. In Java, we have three different types of operators. We have arithmetic operators, equality and relational operators, and we have conditional operators. So now you don't need to know, all of these, although it really would be good for you to memorize what all of these do because they're all pretty common. And a lot of them, like I said, are review. For some of you, these unless you've taken a Boolean, like a discrete mathematics course or some type of basic logic class, these might be new to you. But a lot of this other stuff should be review. So in the next lesson, I'll show you guys how we can use these expressions and these operators in conjunction with some other parts of the Java language to guide a flow or guide a user through a flow. All right, thank you. In conjunction with some other parts of the Java language to guide a flow or guide a user through a flow. All right, thank you.